Good morning, everyone. We're on the record. Good morning, everyone. As chairperson of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board for the District of Columbia, and in accordance with DC Official Code Section 2577D of the Open Meetings Act, I am welcoming you to an emergency meeting of the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board. This meeting is being conducted pursuant to guidance made available by the District of Columbia's Office of Open Government regarding electronic meetings held by public bodies. Electronic meetings by the ABC Board are authorized pursuant to Section 2577A of the DC Code. Pursuant to this guidance, notice of today's meeting was provided in advance of the meeting on ABRA's website and on the District Central meeting calendar. The notice includes the time, date, agenda, and call-in or login information for public participation. This electronic meeting has been hosted by a WebEx account provided by the District of Columbia government. Please address any questions or complaints to the OOG at opengovoffice@dc.gov. My name is Donovan Anderson. I'm chairman of the board. Excuse me. I would like to introduce the other members of ABC board who are also participating electronically. Please respond when I announce your name. Mr. James Short.
Mr. James Short, present.
Mr. Bobby Cato.
Bobby Cato, present.
Ms. Jenny Henson.
Jenny Henson, present.
Mr. Edward Grandis.
Edward Grandis, present.
The board has 5 members in attendance for the conduct of business today, and that constitutes a quorum. Our first order of business today, it is a fact-finding hearing on 3 temporary license applications. And so, good morning, Ms. Washburn. Can you please elevate the rights of the license of the witnesses in this case, please?
Good morning. Please stand by. Kevin Puente, your rights have been elevated. Officer Hernandez, your rights have been elevated. And Ashin Motagi, your rights have been elevated. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on 1 minute, Mr. Grandis. Hold on. Wait until let the parties introduce themselves, please.
Thank
you. Hi, Afshin Matari, Nafisa.
I'm sorry. Can you spell your first and last name and identify your relationship, sir?
Yes, Afshin Matari, AFSHIN. Last name is MOTTAGHI. And
I'm sorry. What's your position, sir? What's your relationship to this establishment?
I'm one of the I'm one of the partners in the business.
And who's the other person, sir?
Naif Issa, NAYEFISSA, and same. I'm one of the partners.
Morning. Mr. Puente, can you identify yourself for the record, please?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Kevin Puente, KEVIN. Last name Puente, PUENTE, ABRA investigator.
And Officer Hernandez, can you please spell and state your name for the record, please?
Yes, I'm Officer Jose Hernandez, JOSE SHEANDE.
Good morning, sir. I will ask everyone, while you're not speaking, please mute your line. So if you're not speaking, please mute your phone. Mr. Grandis, you want to make a statement? You want to say something, sir?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like the record to note that previously, before I actually became sworn in as a member of this body, I represented the licensee Flash in some matters, but it was several years ago. And in talking with DC Bar and having talked with the DC government ethics over the past couple years, I am comfortable being able to participate today. I just would like the record to note that I had a past professional relationship with the licensee. Thank you very much.
All right, this is a fact-finding hearing regarding this establishment, this licensee had requested a series of one-day licenses. Mr. Short, can you adjust your camera so we can see your face, sir? Thank you. So this licensee had requested a series of temporary one-day license. And the board was concerned because it appears that this licensee had utilized a caterer's license to have events at this location for that was in contravention of what a caterer's license should be used for. The board has written several case reports on the utilization of the caterer's license for this address. It's my understanding that the licensee had requested and applied for and now has a temporary certificate of occupancy to utilize the space as a nightclub. One of the reasons why we're having this hearing today, it is because it's our view. We're trying to find out what is the long-term business plan for the licensee in utilizing the space, because we do not believe that it's appropriate to use a temporary license to operate a nightclub permanently. It's my understanding that officer, so Mr. Puente will also testify regarding his knowledge of the operation of the utilization, I think, of the caterer's license at this location. And I believe that Officer Hernandez will also testify from the public safety perspective that he's aware of based on this location. So before the board will take any further action to approve or disapprove the three remaining temporary one-day license application, there is an application for December 2nd, December 10th, and December 31st. We're just trying to get some information from this licensee. It's my understanding that the board, the board had also, we had approved some previous temporary one-day license and for this location. And I'm just trying to find out what occurred during these events. And so to bring it, we're just gathering information, and the board will make a decision whether or not we're gonna approve these 3-day license application that are currently there. So what I'll do is that I'm going to start off with Mr. Puente. For Mr. Puente to, I'm going to, and again, it's a fact-finding hearing. It's informal. I'm not going to swear any witnesses in. And at a fact-finding hearing, the board is not empowered to order anyone to take any specific action. The board might ask you to take certain action. However, you are not mandated to take that action, and at a fact-finding hearing, I'm making that at a fact because we're just gathering facts. So since it's just a fact-finding hearing, it's informal. None of the witnesses are sworn. The board cannot order any party to take any specific action. The party, however, can volunteer to take action, and those actions are binding on them. But I just want to clarify that we're gathering information. We have not made any decisions. This is just a fact-finding, gathering information. And once we have gotten this information, then we'll make a determination whether or not we're going to approve these existing applications. All right. Any questions by anyone before we start? No. And Mr. Yes, you're smiling, so you need to help me. You need to help me pronounce your name phonetically, sir. Your last name.
Mr. Matahi.
Mr. Matahe. Let me write it down. So
You can call me Afshin as well, sir. I'm okay with that. If that's any easier for you.
I am sensitive to the pronunciation, and I can't speak this morning. I'm very sensitive to folks' names, and so I'm trying to make sure that I give you the professional courtesy of saying your name correctly, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks. All right, so let's start with, I'll come to you secondly, but I'll just have Mr. Puente just set the stage, and then I'll have you testify, Mr. Hernandez, and then I'll have the licensee provide some information. So Mr. Puente, what can you give us your name for the record, please?
Kevin Puente,
And where you're currently employed?
the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration.
And how long have you been working at this?
Approximately 7.5 years.
And what's your role and responsibility at ABRA?
I conduct inspections and investigations of licensed ABC establishments throughout the District of Columbia.
Now, are you familiar with this entity, Flash?
Yes.
And how are you familiar with this entity, Flash?
They have a ABC license on Florida Avenue, and they also hold a catering license.
Now, what is the license that they hold on Florida Avenue?
I believe it's a nightclub license.
Now, do you know, is this an act of this business? Is it, I'm going to give you an opportunity, sir, at the end to, all right, I see you raise your hand. I'm going to give you you're on.
Yeah, I just wanted to correct it that we have a tavern license, not a nightclub license.
All right. Okay. Fine. Well, you get an you can put your hand back down, sir, please. But you're going to get an opportunity at the end, after Mr. Puente and Officer Hernandez, after they speak, then you'll have an opportunity to provide any clarification of the record that you believe is appropriate. And I'm going to have some questions that I will also ask you, and other board members might have questions to ask you. And you'll also have an opportunity to ask questions of Mr. Puente or even of Officer Hernandez. So we'll get to you. Go ahead, Mr. Puente.
Yeah, they hold a tavern license and a catering license.
Now, do you know whether or not the tavern license is in use, or is it?
Yes, it's currently active.
Currently active. And you also state that they own a caterer's license.
Yes.
Now, so which one of the license, this hearing is about, they've requested a temporary license application for 2101 New York Avenue Northeast. Are you familiar with this location?
Yes, I am.
And how are you familiar with the 2101 New York Avenue Northeast location?
I visited several times throughout 2022.
And what brought you to visit this location?
On February 12th, 2022, ABRA received a hotline call from MPD regarding a large concert happening at a warehouse at 2101 New York Avenue Northeast.
And what happened?
I went along with several other investigators. We observed a large MPD presence on New York Ave. We went inside. We observed a concert essentially happening. Looked like techno music with the DJ and lights and everything. MPD had concerns about the crowd size. I conducted a records check and didn't see no ABRA license for that location. I made contact with Mr. Naif Essa, who advised me. He showed me the catering license. I asked to see the certificate of occupancy. They couldn't produce one at the time. I did a records check in DCRA records at that time, and it came back to a electrical warehouse storage facility. So that's when I called the fire marshal's office to have them come out due to the C of O not listing an occupant load. The fire marshal arrived. They found several fire code violations. At the time, they had cars backed up to the garage doors, blocking the exit if they had opened those doors. Ultimately, the event was ended around 2 o'clock, I believe, in the morning. So they closed down, or they ended the event at 2 o'clock. I went back. MPD had concerns because, as well, patrons were leaving and running across New York Avenue. New York Avenue is a busy artery in the district, and people were running across the street to the gas station and getting in ride shares. Cars were stopping along the road for people to get in or dropped off. So on February 26th, I went back. The same thing was occurring. We got a call from MPD about the event. Techno music was happening. I met Mr. Essa again, who showed me the catering license. I advised him that the C of O is the heart of the issue because there's no occupant load on it. During that time, the fire marshal came out, did an inspection. They found that most of the issues were abated from the first visit, but MPD still had concerns about people running across the street, jumping in cars, car stopping. Mr. Essa advised me that he's in the process of opening up a new location at on Fenwick Street Northeast, a few blocks away, but it was trying to incur the permits, obtain the permits for that location. And in the meantime, he had all these musicians and DJs that he needed to keep employed because what kind of business he runs, he had to let him know that he's still relevant in that industry. So he still needed to book them. So sometime in the summer, they obtained a certificate of occupancy, a temporary C of O that expires, I believe, January 1st, 2023 for 700 people for nightclub use. So they got the C of O now from DCRA, but it expires in January. And that's all I have, sir.
Now, I know that the agency had previously approved a temporary license application for this location. Are you familiar with that?
I was made aware this week. I went out in October 21st to visit after a hotline call from the ANC regarding loud noise. At that time, they were still running the caterer in October. And I believe I advised Mr. Essa to start looking at 1 day's possibility. That'll probably help with instead using the caterer, because with 700 people, there was hard to provide for food for 700 people at that time.
All right. All right. Does any board members have any questions for Mr. Puente? You're on mute, Mr. Short. I can't hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Thank you very much. Investigator Puente, how are you today?
Pretty good, sir. Yourself?
Great. How many years of experience do you have as a investigator for ABRA?
7.5 years.
How much experience do you have with public safety and places that serve alcohol in the District of Columbia?
I would say 7.5 years.
In your 7.5 years, how many places have you been to, such as 2101 New York Avenue Northeast, warehouses that have been converted into nightclubs?
I would say probably a dozen times at least.
How is that worked out for the occupants, or the owners, or the operations? How do those functions normally work out?
Most times when I've gone, it's been either shut down by DC Fire due to unsafe conditions, with no C of O being held at these warehouses.
So would you say at this particular time, all of the issues that you just mentioned don't apply anymore for 2101 New York Avenue?
Yes, sir. When I spoke with Fire Marshal's office last in the summer, they did several walkthroughs and they advised me that the issues were abated at the warehouse.
So you mentioned people crossing New York Avenue, which is a very busy artery, as you mentioned also in your testimony. How much parking is there for 2101 New York Avenue Northeast?
They have a small fenced-in driveway area, but the fire marshal advised them on both visits that they can't park there because it obstructed the front door, and there was a garage door as well, and they can't have cars blocking that. So there's no parking for patrons, to say the least.
Okay, well, knowing that you don't have a lot of credentials as an investigator other than for ABRA, how much knowledge do you have about the building there at 2101 New York Avenue?
I conducted a records check with DCRA. I found out it was part of an electric supply company. They had their storage stuff there for a number of years, but they stopped using it. And Mr. Essa went in the rented the building out from a company.
And again, I know that you don't have much background in public safety or fire regulations, but to your knowledge, how many exits and egress do they have for 700 people in that building at one time?
If I recall, they got the front door, then there's a garage door on the front, then in the back, they have another door and another garage door, from what I recall.
So would you say 2 exits, 3 exits? How many?
Yeah, I'll say no more than 3.
For 700 people?
Yes, sir.
Is that normal?
Not for a large concert venue.
Can I ask you, as an investigator for ABRA, have you received much public safety training when it comes to alcohol clubs and people being intoxicated while being at these clubs? Or what knowledge do you have of that public safety wise?
I sat down. We had several years ago training with the fire marshal's office, and about every time I've been out with the fire marshal office, they're training us what to look for. So if we need to call them, that we know what we're talking about, or if it's an emergency, who to call.
Okay, so now we've gone over the number of exits for 700 people, which I can tell you, I know that is enough, not enough exits for 700 people. I won't go into why I know that, but I do know that to be a fact. And I do know for a fact that zoning requires parking when you have 700 people in a building in the city. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, sir.
So is there any parking for that venue at 2101 New York Avenue?
No, sir.
And people crossing New York Avenue, that busy artery that you mentioned earlier, which is a main east-west artery in and out of Washington, D.C. to the Baltimore-Washington Parkway into 295 and 395 into 495. Is it usual for people to be crossing that street, pedestrians?
No, sir.
Is that hazardous and dangerous in your opinion?
Yes, because I believe if I recall from the first visit, MPD had to shut down New York Avenue to control the crowd from crossing.
So a main artery of the city had to close down for this one day temporary licensee to have his operation there at 2101 New York Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I would just like to say for the record, public safety is an issue that ABRA deals with and that this board deals with. I'd like that on the public record. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to ask these questions.
Any other questions by any other board members? Mr. Puente. All right. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to, Officer Hernandez, I don't want you to be here all day. So good morning, sir. So I'll just have you, can you please state your name for the record again, sir, please?
Yes, I'm Officer Jose Hernandez. I'm with the 5th District. I am the club coordinator or the RDO coordinator for the district. So I work a lot with the clubs and venues that host large events in the district. Not in the entire district, just in the 5th District area. So I've dealt with Echo Stage, Aqua, Bliss, Power Nightclub Stadium when it was opened. I've dealt with Flash in the past where they were at Whitfield Entertainment Group. So I've dealt with this for over 4 years now.
Thank you. So Officer Hernandez, please let us know, how is it that this location, 2101 New York Avenue in Northeast, came to your attention and regarding this licensee?
So it came to my attention because since I do work a lot of the RDOs, we happened to notice that this event was that were being hosted, and our watch commander, because he's the only one that's able to shut down any party, any pop-up events or whatever the case may be. He was called out to that location at the time that we had to shut it down in June. I was on the civil disturbance unit, and we had to all respond out to block New York Avenue in order to be able to get it safe for these patrons that were running out under the influence, not really paying attention to cars or anything of that nature, cars passing by them and stuff like that before we even got out there. So the public safety is a big factor And not to mention, a lot of these people have nowhere to park, as Investigator Puente has stated earlier. They find different places around which are private properties. So a lot of these folks that come in and try to park at, say, for example, across the street at the McDonald's or at the Exxon gas station or a 7-Eleven, they'll either have their cars ticketed and towed, or so they come out and find that their cars are gone because they've been towed away. They'll also try to park at the former KFC Taco Bell area, which is directly right adjacent to the venue. And same thing, so you're having a whole like 700 people per se, right? Go into these events, and it's an unsafe location for them to be at. And it's only a matter of time before someone ends up getting hurt or worse.
I know you talked about June. I think you specifically spoke about an event in June. Has this address been brought to the attention of MPD over the last 30 days?
Yes, sir. Every time they host an event, it's brought to my attention. What's going on with it? What can we do about it? And as I tell them, as long as they have a one-day license for the events, there's not much that we can do about it. We try to, because we also have Aqua Nightclub directly across the street from this venue, but they have parking. They have their crowds leaving around the same time that these. This other venue is closing up, so we have a ton of traffic that our midnight officers have to deal with, and also the safety of all these people leaving at the same time. So it's pretty hectic, to say, between 3 and 4:30 in the morning, trying to get everybody safely home without anybody getting injured. So, but every time that they're opened, I'm always made aware of it.
Now, from MPD's perspective, what, if anything, that you believe that the licensee should do to control the crowd? What type of crowd control mechanisms do you believe that the licensee should have? I know you talked about Aqua Nightclub across that they have on their own parking. So what is it that you believe that they should have?
Well, there's actually nothing that they can do, because when you come out of that warehouse, you come directly onto New York Avenue. There's no space. There's like their entrance doors, and then the sidewalk, and the little you want to say a small driveway for the loading dock. But other than that, you're right on New York Avenue. There is no, one way or another, and if you got people that have been have been drinking all night because they've been partying and under the influence, they're walking on New York Avenue on both sides, and you have cars whizzing by them. So it's a very unsafe location. On from our standpoint, the only thing we can do is, we try to put officers in place around the area to try to slow traffic down, and that's what we can do. But as far as the venue, there's not much they can do.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else you want to add? I'm going to have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing and possibly ask a question about this, because you stated that they asked for dates of December 2nd, 10th, and the 31st. Is that correct?
Yes, we have 3 applications in front of us for December 2nd, December 10th, December 31st.
Okay. Could they explain, the owners here, why is it that they have December 7th at SeatGeek selling for a Diplo concert on a Wednesday?
December
If
what?
December 7th.
Well, we'll ask about that, but I don't know what license that they're using for that event.
Okay.
I don't know what license they have for that event, but at least I know that I'm not aware of the ABC board issuing a license for December 7th for that. You're talking about for the 2101 New York Avenue Northeast location. I am not aware of. So this license application is just for those 3 dates that I'm aware of. But you could ask, you're welcome to ask them what event is that on is it their event? You can ask that question, sir.
Yeah, okay. Is that yours event, sir? Mr. Afshin?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to really address all the issues down the line instead of just jumping to December 7th. There's a lot of, misinformation and other information I'd like to provide as we, get to that point. Because
We're going to have that, but we're going to have that, and I'm not sure how long the officer will stay online. I don't believe this hearing is going to last much longer.
I can go ahead and answer that December 7th question. So our business is very fluid. Essentially, when we submitted for these 10 dates, these were the 10 dates that we had confirmed for artists. And December 7th ended up happening literally like 2 weeks ago. And so when it closed within a couple of days, we got hit up through the agent. This is just so you guys kind of understand how it works. The agent hits us up. He's like, hey, we have this artist available for December 7th. We closed the deal, but we had already submitted for those 10 specific dates. So once the deal was closed, we were going to reach out to add the specific date, because obviously we're not trying to hide anything here for listing stuff online. That's not our intention. But this fact hearing thing came up, so we proceeded not to go for that specific date. This is the only reason why it was never submitted. It wasn't us trying to, withhold information. It was that when we submitted for these 10 dates in early November, that December 7th date was never confirmed.
And so you're saying that because today is December 1st, and unless there's an application into our office, you cannot have an event on December, and that application would have to have been, you're outside of the window to apply for a license for that date, because it would not be timely. So I'm just, as an FYI, in order, you are outside of the window to apply for a one-day license from our agency on December 7th. Just as an FYI. All right.
So
all right. Go ahead, Officer Hernandez.
Right. So what I've also encountered is that, in the past, right, they didn't have a COO, they didn't have any licenses to open up the warehouse and stuff like that, yet they still went ahead and hosted these events and stuff. So my question is, you're selling these tickets online. How would MPD know? Because I'm having my higher ups come down and asking me about this event. What can we do to stop it? What can we do to go, from it going on? And if in the past they haven't adhered to any of the regulations that the District of Columbia has put in place, how do we know, MPD, even ABRA and DC government, that they're not going to host this event trying to do it under the radar? And then we have to respond out to that location and try to shut down that venue for that night. And then we're going to have to deal with 700 people, not them. So I want to know from their standpoint, if they are just told right now that they are out of the window of applying for this one-day license, are they going to go ahead and cancel that event? Or are they just going to go forth with it and hoping that nobody finds out about it?
Well, I think everyone knows that there's an event scheduled, because I'm not sure these hearings are on YouTube, so the entire world knows that, and it's what you've just stated. So I think that, I don't know, I guess he needs to respond.
Again, sir, I think you stated that, we would be able to discuss all these points instead of just one question being asked of us. I think there's a lot of inaccuracies here and, facts that need to be stated correctly before we lead into this. I think it's not fair to, if you're just looking for responses without actually having the background story of what's going on here.
Well, I think the officer stated that he's aware that there is an advertisement for an event at the location on December 7th. As I've told the officer, at least the purpose of this fact-finding hearing event, the fact-finding hearing today, is to determine whether or not we're going to grant you a temporary one-day license for December 2nd, December 10th, and December 31st. Those are the dates that the ABC board is considering whether or not they will approve a one-day license. And I'm just stating that the ABC board, at least I am not aware of an application in our office to approve an event on December 7th. And if this application is not, and if this application has not been submitted, you're out of the timeline to submit an application for December 7th and for us to review it and either approve or disapprove. So it is a fair question to say, if you're having an event on December 7th, what license are you going to use to have this event? Because it cannot be a temporary one-day license because you have not applied for one as yet, and you're out of the timeline, the deadline for us to apply for such a license from ABRA. So I think the specific question is that, are you having an event? Or let me put the question that way. This is a better question. Do you plan to have an event on December 7th where you will be selling and serving alcohol?
There is
the event. If you can have an event, we don't have an authority over the event if alcohol is not being sold, if alcohol is not being provided. So I guess as far as ABRA is concerned, do you plan to have an event on December 7th where you plan on selling or serving alcohol?
At this time, we do have an event planned for date. Paperwork was meant to be, I think it was submitted by Veritas yesterday for that date, along with, I think one other that looked in later in the month of December.
All right. Okay. Do you have any other questions, Officer Hernandez? And then I'm going to give you I'll have an opportunity for the licensee to speak, and then they can address whatever issue that they want to address.
No, not at this time. And
right,
I can stay for the remainder of the meeting.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you. All right. All right.
Mr. Chair, is the board going to be able to ask the officer any questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Short.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Is it Officer Hernandez or Sergeant Hernandez?
Officer
Hernandez. And so, for the record, you testified that you are the 5th District Metropolitan Police Department's coordinator for nightlife. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How many years of experience do you have with MPD?
I've been with MPD for 11 years.
How many years have you been working with nightlife with the 5th District?
Approximately 10 years, but I became the coordinator of the nightlife the last 4 years.
Okay. Speaking specifically about 2101 New York Avenue Northeast. When they have events there, which you described, where the streets are being blocked off and you had to close down New York Avenue, how many District of Columbia resources, public safety wise, are taken away from the rest of the district to handle just that situation in the 2100 block of New York Avenue?
So that the night that occurred, we had a civil disturbance unit out. So we're talking about approximately 30 officers, and then we had additional resources, which were the district officers that were working midnights that night, and we ended up pulling most of the midnight officers that were available, that were not on calls, to assist us with that for about 2 to 3 hours.
Approximately how many officers was that?
In total, probably close to 35 to 40 officers.
So we're saying 30 just from the 5th district and 35 from the citywide. Is that correct?
No, in total, 35 would be it, because like I said, we had the civil disturbance unit already on site for a different situation. So because they knew that we were there, they used us instead. But had we not been there, they would have pulled all the resources from the midnight officers. And at that point, we're talking about a good 75% of the officers would have been used, because we're down, let's say, if we have about 22 officers working on midnights, probably like 15 to 16 of them would have been pulled with their vehicles to try to block and try to assist with the pedestrians, trying to get them safely to their vehicles or their ride shares or whatever may have happened.
So your professional answer would be especially important to myself as a board member. So you're saying when these events happened at 2101 New York Avenue, specifically the night that you're mentioning, and 75% of the Metropolitan Police Department's resources in the 5th District are brought there, what happens to the rest of the communities that they normally patrol?
They're going without any service whatsoever until we clear up that situation. Once it's cleared, then that's when they can respond back. But for the most part, we're held to that area, and you have, a few units that once they clear, then they go on the next run and the next run and the next run. But yeah, it puts a strain on the 5th District when these situations occur.
Okay, so now we've got it from you that 2101 New York Avenue Northeast, a warehouse being used for a nightclub, is causing resources in the city, public safety resources, to be reallocated, and the rest of the city or the rest of the 5th District just has to wait until that event is over before they can call and get adequate police protection. Is that correct? Or am I phrasing that correctly?
Yes, sir. Or they'll have to just wait a while until some of the other officers that are available can clear from whatever previous calls they had to respond out to their calls. But yes, it does take away from the citizens.
Okay, and I know this is out of your lane totally, but are you aware, or does anybody in the district government, or especially MPD or ABRA, how much alcohol are they serving, and are the people inebriated when they come out of this place?
That's a question that I can't answer because I really don't know how Flash serves. But I can imagine if you're trying to make as much money as you can per night because you have so many events to host, you're going to allow people to drink as much as they want.
Okay, well, Officer Hernandez, we thank you for your service, you and all the members of the 5th District who respond and keep the citizens safe in the 5th District and the District of Columbia. We thank you for your testimony today. You've been quite compelling. And again, thank you, because all of this is on the record. And hopefully we don't have any disasters there at 2101 New York Avenue. We know around the country things are happening in these nightclubs and these night spots. We know the dangers that they put our communities in. And thank you for your service in protecting us. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Short. Any other questions by any other board member of the officer before I have the licensee speak? All right. So who wants to speak? This is your opportunity, sir. So you can please identify yourself when you speak. We have a court reporter, so they're transcribing what's been said. So that's why one of the reasons I need you to identify yourself when you speak, please. Okay, go ahead.
I appreciate that. It's Afshin Matafi. So I appreciate the time here and speaking to the board. Just to, as a recap, you know, a lot of stuff seems to go back to the first time that the officers, the inspectors and the officers came, which was actually back in February. I know Officer Hernandez cited a date in June, which we have no record of any incidents or anybody coming to the venue at that date. So the February date was, you know, we were already have made a significant amount of corrections to the space to make sure that it met the standards that would be required by DCRA, the fire department, and so forth. And we did fall short of some of those, which the fire department were kind enough to point out to us. And they wrote us the notes, you know, with the changes that needed to be made, which made it possible for us to go to DCRA and eventually get a temporary C of O to operate in the fashion that we wanted to. It should be noted that that night, and we do understand that, you know, there was a need for, I guess, ABRA or the police department to close the venue down. But, you know, part of the issue with, you know, sending out 600 or so people out onto New York Avenue all at one time is going to cause a safety hazard for people, which was something that we discussed at the time to let us close the party down slowly, turn the music down to a volume so people could trickle out little by little. Most of our attendees use share card services like Uber, Lyft, and so forth, and do not drive to the venue. We promote this through the events, and we let them all know that, you know, we prefer everybody to come. And this is the same policy that we have at Flash at our other location in Shaw. We promote for people to use ride shares, whether, you know, there's not enough parking in the city. Everybody knows that no matter what neighborhood you go to. And besides the fact, if you're going to be coming to our type of venue, you're going to be drinking. It's not safe for anybody. And, you know, I think a very unsafe environment was created that night when they just demanded that we shut the music down, shut everything down, and push all those people out on the street at the same time. Car services can't really support, you know, all those rides all at the same time, which meant a lot of people standing around or possibly crossing the street. In general, most of the car shares pick up in front of the venue, so nobody's crossing to the other side of New York Avenue. We do have parking in the building adjacent to us, which is owned by the landlord and is used for small amounts of parking when needed. But like I said, we do promote and we really push for people to use ride shares so that they're not driving to the venue. You know, all the corrections and everything was made. So we are operating on a temporary C of O, which ends at the end of this year. So, you know, these licenses that we're requesting are just to get us through the end of the year. And then this venue will no longer be used in this format anymore. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware of that this is our last month there. You know, the temporary licenses were something that we found out a little bit after using the catering licenses. The ABRA inspectors were kind enough to tell us, hey, this is a better route to, you know, make it more in line with city codes to use it. And that's why we applied for all these licenses. And, you know, we're hoping that the other 2 dates in question or the 3 dates in question today get answered. And we would still like to, if possible, to get, you know, permitting done for the dates that were added on last minute. It would be our are, you know, in everybody's favor to do this as ABRA, the city requires. And that's what we've done so far by getting the temporary licenses. You know, it's a great deal of expense that we went through for a venue that's going to be open, not even for 1 year, to make sure that we meet the building codes and requirements that fire department and DCRA has requested us. Also, to address the exit issues, we do have 4 wide exits. We have 2 double doors, one on the front and back of the building, and 2 garage doors, one at the front and back of the building. And as per the fire department's request, we do hire 2 fire watchmen to assist with each of the shows that go on there. This was part of the agreement for the temporary license. So we do have additional fire help there for these all the shows. Yeah, and then also just to point out, you know, there are other venues that are just down the street, in particular Bliss, which is on the other side of New York Avenue. And it's more so their customers that actually park across the street on New York Avenue as you driving up towards our warehouse space. And these are the people that are constantly crossing New York Avenue. It's not our customers because we don't utilize those parking spaces. Yeah, police. And as far as the police, the request for police, coming out to our events, really, they've only come out in that first time back in February. I don't believe there's a record of, I think there was one other time that one officer just came by to make sure that everything was safe as they saw an event going on. But we haven't had any issues at the venue that have required the assistance of the police at any time that would strain the police department's staffing, other than, you know, the beginning when we started out in February. And yeah, we also have, you know, we've also gone forward and have a place that serves food on it's a permanent area where we serve pizzas and fresh juices. So we're always having food available for all the customers, as well as fresh juices, candies, cookies, stuff like that. And one other issue that I would like to address, which I didn't really appreciate very much from Officer Hernandez, that, you know, we're there to make as much money as possible in terms of selling alcohol. We abide by all the ABRA's regulations, and we make sure that if people are drunk, they're not being served, or if they're intoxicated, that they're not being served. If they seem tipsy as they're leaving the venue, we hold them down. We give them free water. We make sure that their friends come and find them. Our business has been there. We're celebrating 1 decade of being in the Shaw neighborhood coming up in June. And we've done that by, you know, looking after our customers and making sure that we stay, you know, positive towards the community, and that no incidences happen while they're leaving our venue, whether it's at Flash or a warehouse or anywhere else that we might, you know, hold an event. Yeah, extensive responsibility. That's it for, also the fire evac. You know, when we applied for these licenses, there were fire evacuation plans that were submitted that the fire department has us, you know, posted throughout the venue. There were all sorts of safety measures that we have been abiding by to make sure that, you know, we are taking all the precautions to provide a safe environment for our customers for each and every event. Anything else you'd like to add? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, all right. So is it still your intent to have an event on December 2nd, which is tomorrow?
As I said, I'd like to follow up with Veritas Law Firm. You know, we sent in our application.
No,
I'm sorry. Yes, for the 2nd. I mean,
which is tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, we weren't aware that this license would be pulled from us, you know, the day before. So we haven't made any, you know, changes to our venue plans.
You haven't answered the question, sir. The question I said to you.
Yes.
Is it your intent to have an event on December 2nd, which is tomorrow?
It is our intent to have an event tomorrow, and if our, you know, the permitting license stands, we'd like to also sell alcohol at the event.
All right, I just want to, because I said so, and is it your it's your intent to have an event on December 2nd, Is it your intent to have an event on December 10th?
It's not 10th, it's the 8th.
I think the other date in question is the 8th.
10th. Sir, I'm only going by the application that were submitted
Yeah,
to us
I'm
a month
sorry.
ago.
We didn't submit the 10th.
Yes, you did.
We have no intent to go on with a event on the 10th.
What about I'm only, when you got the notice for the fact finding hearing, I think you applied for 6 events. I don't recall how many events that we approved, but I know that we had approved some events.
Yes.
And the outstanding events that were not approved, and that's why we have the fact finding hearing, were for December 2nd, December 10th, and December 31st. So I can only act on application that's in front of me. And so there's a current application for December 2nd, and you're stating that if the board, let me say it this way, if the board approves the application for December 2nd, it is your intent to move forward with an event tomorrow. Is that correct?
That is correct. We received the permits originally, so we didn't think that there was an issue with either of these dates. So yeah, we didn't have any other plans otherwise. Yes.
But you have not received a license as yet from ABRA for you to sell and serve alcohol on December 2nd.
Yes. So the event can go on, but it won't have serve alcohol if you do not approve the event. Correct.
Perfect. Is it still your intent? Is it your intent that you plan to have an event on December 31st at this 2101 New York Avenue address?
Yes, it is our intent. And again, if we get approved for alcohol, selling of alcohol, we'll do so. Otherwise, we'll have the event without it.
I want to make sure that I have in front of me whatever applications that you have submitted to ABRA. So that's one, because time is of the essence. And if all right, it's my understanding, sir, that you only have 3 pending applications in front of us. And the 3 pending applications that you have in front of us are December 2nd, December 10th, and December 31st. So there's no application in front of us for any other date. And if you plan to have, if you plan to have any event based on the timeline for December 7th, December 8th, you are unable to apply for a license from ABRA for those dates because of the timeline, because of the timeline to apply. And one thing I'll say to you, you currently have 2 licenses. You have a license for Flash Caterer, and you also stated that you have a CT license. So as a licensee, I would hope that you are aware of the rules and regulations about what is required to utilize a license. But I just want the record to reflect that there is no pending pending application in front of the board for any other dates outside of the 3 dates that I just mentioned to you. And since you told us that you're not going to have an event on December 10th, you're withdrawing that application, so the board will not act on the December 10th date.
I'd have to look at the paperwork, sir, but I'm pretty sure the application was for December 8th, not 10th, but I could be wrong.
Well, all right. I'm getting some mixed messages. So the agenda says December 10th. So you might be correct. It might be December 8th. So if you submitted an application, I believe that there's an application for December 8th. I am not I don't have the application in front of me, but there's some date, but there's a December date flying out there. So the board will look and make a determination. The board will look at that. One of the things that, let me ask you a question. And again, one of the things I stated before, I can't order you because we're in a fact-finding hearing, and if we approve, I can't order you to do anything. But one of the things I've heard from MPD is that there's a public safety issue because of the venue, in the sense that when folks come out of the front door there on New York Avenue, and they might be spilling out in the street. Would you consider hiring RDOs and RDO to assist with what is occurring outside once folks are out on the street?
Yeah, RDO is not a problem, sir.
So one of the things, so if the board was to approve the temporary license application, if the board was to approve the temporary license application, you are committing to the board. And again, I can't order you, but you're committing to the board that you would at least apply for RDO, that you'd apply for RDO. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And I stand corrected that you did apply for a license on December 8th. So there's a license, an application was submitted to the agency to apply for a license on December 8th. So what the board is considering is an application for December 2nd, December 8th, and December 31st. Those are the 3 dates that licenses, at least those are the 3 dates. If there are going to be events, and if the ABC board was to approve the sanctioning of these events, those are the 3 dates that the ABC board would sanction alcohol being served. If they have events outside of those dates, at least it's not been sanctioned by the ABC board, and they cannot legally serve alcohol. I just want, I'm informing Officer Hernandez that events outside, at least outside of those dates, would not be sanctioned by the ABC board for them to serve alcohol. They could, however, have an event, but they could not sell or serve alcohol during these events outside of the possibility of December 2nd, December 8th, and December 31st. Now, Mr. Matahashi, am I close?
Yeah, that's very close, sir. Thank you.
All right. Who's responsible for these events? So if we were to approve these events for these dates, the 2nd, the 8th, the 10th, who is the responsible official?
As far as like somebody on site, you mean?
From the licensee, who is the responsible licensee for this event? Who is that?
Naif Issa.
So who applied for the license?
It's under Mr. Issa's name.
Okay, all right. And what are the hours of operation that you've applied for these licenses?
Yeah, for December 2nd, 10 to 3 a.m. For December 8th, I believe 10 to 2 a.m. or 9 to 2 a.m. And then for New Year's Eve, I believe it was 10 to 4 a.m., which is the extension normally that occurs for New Year's Eve for the holiday.
All right. Now you've heard about that we have received noise complaints. So what is it that you have, what steps are you taking to mitigate the noise, the noise complaints or the noise that has been complained by the ANC or the officer?
I believe we haven't had a noise complaint since June, if I'm not mistaken. So, we've had a few events since then, and there hasn't been a single noise complaint. And then, what Officer Hernandez alludes to, again, just so we can put on the record, was back in February. And since then, we've been operating pretty much close to a year, and knock on wood, we have not had a single incident. We have a very good security team. We make sure everything's done accordingly. And what led to that night with a lot of the staff, just to reiterate, with a lot of the police units being summoned to our venue, was because I believe ABRA and the fire marshal, ABRA wanted us shut down immediately. And we Mr. Puentes can attest to this. We asked multiple times, we're like, we should do this over a 15 to 30 minute period, because it's not super safe to send 600 people or 700 people all at once. Generally what happens is when you're hosting an event, I'm sure we've all been to events, people trickle out slowly. Some people come at 10 and will leave at 11:30, 12. Some people will leave at 1 or whatnot. But when you expect 600-700 people to leave all at once, that's what's created that one kind of, night. Other than that, since then, we haven't had any issues. We got our CFO, and we've been abiding by all the rules that were set by DCRA, the fire watch. And, to reiterate, we tell everybody to use ride shares. There hasn't been a single incident of any accident of anybody doing anything outside the venue, nothing.
I just want to ask a question. Isn't it correct that one of the reasons why ABRA had asked you to shut the party down, was because you were operating an illegal party? Isn't that correct?
Well, technically,
I'm sorry, we were operating as what?
An illegal party.
An illegal party. Isn't that why ABRA had requested that the party be shut down immediately?
Well, the problem was that we hadn't a legitimate a C of O that stated a number on there. It was a C of O. It was an existing C of O, but as you know, C of Os for warehouse spaces do not give an occupancy load. So that was the main issue.
Yeah, there was an actual number on the CFO.
Yeah.
And we've always had we actually have like an actual full out kitchen, which the last time Mr. Pence was there, me and him were actually talking in that kitchen. And we have like a double-decker pizza oven. We're always serving food the whole time, making sure there's people can come out of the party and grab food while they wait for their ride share or whatnot. So we try to make sure everything's kind of done accordingly. So we're not just be like, all right, everybody has to leave.
Now, is it clear to you? Are you currently, or do you plan to continue using your caterer's license to operate this venue?
Well, I mean, we have a catered event coming up. So yeah, I mean, sometimes when it's called for, yes, sir.
But are you using your caterer's license to operate a nightclub? Or I'm asking a specific question. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand, but this is not a nightclub per se. This is an event space. We do have multiple different types of events here. It's not just a nightclub. We have, not every time we're serving alcohol there. There's kids parties that, it's been used as an event space. We're
actually hosting robotic classes now. There's like you've seen those like robot wars. So there's a company, a nonprofit that we donate the space to come in.
I asked you different. The question I ask you, sir, is that have you stopped utilizing your caterer's license to operate in this location? That's the question I ask you.
Well, that's why we're applied for all these one-day licenses. Yes, sir. This is why we're trying to get, just to do it as ABRA has requested us to.
So
and we were advised to by the inspectors.
And you are advised that you cannot use your current caterer's license in the space.
Yes, that's it.
All right. Any questions by anyone else?
One question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Short.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming in and testifying today. Since you are not using a caterer's license to bring alcohol to this 2101 New York Avenue, how are you purchasing alcohol, and are you paying the appropriate amount of taxes, or is the city gaining anything or losing anything by you? Well, actually, who are you buying your alcohol for these events?
Well, we just using our license to purchase the alcohol through the flash license.
So you're still using your flash license to get the alcohol for the one-day licenses?
Yes. Is this not appropriate?
No, I'm just trying to make sure that we get all of our tax dollars and everything stays in the right place, because
we're trying to help you guys make more tax money for the city. It's good for everybody. We wish we could do this, keep going on, and it's good for everybody. We see, but of course,
hold on, Mr. Short. Hold on a minute, please. Now, you're supposed to use your caterer's license to purchase alcohol for a catered event. I'm going to ask. Hold on a minute, Mr. Puente. You're supposed to utilize your temporary one-day license to purchase alcohol for that event. I do not believe it is appropriate for you to use your CT license to purchase alcohol for your catered event or for your one-day license event, sir. Hold on one more. Hold on. Mr. Puente, you have something you want to state, sir?
Yes, sir. So back in October when I visited, I did a check on this with our wholesalers. I can confirm that they were using their catering license to purchase alcohol, and the deliveries were being made to New York Ave. So we definitely made sure the licenses were being separated with the alcohol purchases.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
No, I was just going to say, we have been using the catering license when we do the, catered events or so. But, for the one-day license, we have been using, the flash CT license. I was not aware that, the one-day license would open up the door to, us buy directly from the distributors to have it, shipped directly to the address. So if that's the way it's supposed to be done, we can certainly, abide by that.
That's the way it's supposed to be done. So yes, Officer Hernandez.
Yes, the gentleman earlier stated something about the noise complaints. How would they know if they have a noise complaint if what's been going on is that we don't have the personnel to, when you have a noise complaint, it's so small of a call on the volume of calls that a lot of times we don't get to those noise complaints. Especially from the nightclubs. So we wouldn't address it at that point because our officers are stretched throughout the district handling every other call. So when he says, they haven't had any noise complaints as of recently, that's not correct. We have had complaints. As the ANC commissioner has called us about these noise complaints. They've called 911. And if we get to them, we get to them. But most of the time, we are unable to, based on the fact that we don't have the personnel because they're all tied up on other calls that we cannot get to these noise complaints. So there have been numerous noise complaints over the last couple of months.
Yeah, I was only speaking towards the ones that we had. And what we've done is, during the warmer months, we have, as I said, 2 large garage doors that, we kept open to keep air circulating, which I think was causing some of those noise complaints. But as it's wintertime, that door stays down, and we have, security staff that mans the door should there be any type of emergency, and the garage door needs to be open immediately as per, fire marshals, the fire department's request. So I think most of those noise, if there were any noise complaints, that we were not aware of, that I think would have been caused by those, the garage door in the rear being open, which now it is not.
Okay, I'm going to bring this matter to close shortly. Now, it's you're stating that as of if this event is approved for the 31st, you have no current plans to continue hosting events in this space. Is that correct?
That is the last event that will be held at this space. Yes, sir.
All right. All right. And so, if you're agreeing that if the ABC board was to approve these applications, that at least you would reach out to MPD to have RDOs placed at the location.
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with the RDO process?
Yes, sir. We have them at Flash on a regular basis since coming out of the pandemic for our area. So I'm very familiar with it. And, I know it's a little bit difficult getting on the schedule with the police department because of the high demand these days, but we can certainly, since we already have a good connection and the tie-in with Miss Brenda Smith there, we can see if we could get it done right away, if that's what ABRA is calling for.
The board is aware that you can make a request for RDO, and based on manpower, that RDO is not available. So if you make a request for RDO, if you make a timely request for RDO, then you are in compliance with your promise. If you have not made a request for RDO, if you make a timely request for RDO based on your knowledge of what's required for RDO, and based on manpower, no officers are provided, then you have complied with your promise. However, if you have not made the request, then you are not in compliance, and the ABC board would not favorably look at future requests for licenses if you have not complied with what you have promised us that you would do if licenses are approved. Okay?
Yes, sir. Understood.
Any final comments before I bring closure to this hearing?
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Grandis.
Could we get them to sort of explain what security that they plan to have now, based on the testimony of our investigator and of the officer? Security, from what I have not gotten the full knowledge of what security they have or they plan to include for the upcoming events.
All of our events are staffed by our own security staff. We have multiple people from front, back, and monitoring inside. We even have one outside of the venue, making sure that, people are not causing any traffic, or, at the front to monitor the car share services as well. So I would imagine we would just continue the way we have, as we've not had any issues.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that the officer talked about the safety of people leaving, particularly early in the morning, crossing Florida Avenue. Perhaps the event people can have additional outside security, particularly upon closing, to make sure people cross Florida Avenue safely.
We already have our security, and I think the request for RTO would additionally back that request up as well. But we already provide that at the end of the night, and the car services don't go to the other side of New York Avenue. They pull up to the front of the venue every time. So I don't really see. I think this was one instance where everybody was pushed out on the street back in February, where we had people just trying to get a car, and you had people just strangling, going wherever they could because they wanted to get away from the crowd, and the mistake of getting in the wrong car share or whatnot would happen. But it's not a problem. But we're more than happy to provide. Again, like we do it already, but.
Officer Hernandez.
Yes, hi. So you're saying that you have somewhat control of the ride share. So when you guys close, you guys do a hard close, or do you do a trickle out event throughout the entire night? So you never see 300 to 400 people leave at one time, because that's when you guys are done.
No, sir, we do not. We never have a hard close. We do, we mind, even though, it's costly for us, keeping the staff there and so forth. We believe, and this is the same procedure that we have at Flash and Shaw, that we don't just close up and push everybody out at the same time. To us, this is an extremely unsafe environment. Having people trickle out of the venue little by little is, the safest way to release any type of venue, whether it's, 930 Club, Anthem, Flash, whatever the size is. This is the way to do it, I believe, as far as business practice is concerned.
Well, yeah, that is correct. The only thing is though that, you come to a point of the night where you have patrons that don't want to leave because they want to continue the party, right? So you're going to have a good amount of people still standing inside your location. And at that point, 4 o'clock in the morning comes around, right? Say, and you have to close your doors. So you do still have 40, 50, possibly more than that, hanging out, partying and stuff like that because they don't want to leave the night, right? So how is it that you're not creating a traffic jam by having all these people standing outside on New York Avenue, which is the same time that every other club has closed for the district, and everybody is leaving out towards, Maryland or Virginia, whatever the case may be, using that New York thoroughway. So you're having a congestion of a bunch of rideshare. Yeah, it's funny, but I mean, it's actually true. It's a congestion that's being held up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So you say there's no accidents, but you're not dealing with the accidents. The officers are dealing with the accidents. You guys pack up, leave, and don't have to worry about the situation. We do. See what I'm saying? And then you say that that's from the other nightclubs. The other nightclubs have been operating for years, and they have places for these patrons to come and park at. So you control everybody also that doesn't use rideshare, and where do they park?
So I think there's a couple answers. The last part about the other nightclubs, they actually literally park. So Douglas owns that whole area, and there's a bunch of pull-up little driveways next to us, and they park across the customers for whatever other venues across the street. They take all that parking. They've actually parked in front of our actual fences from time to time. We've had to call tow companies. The other part is our venue's kind of set up a little bit different. So, Mr. Fuentes can explain. So when you walk in, there's like a kind of like a room for check-in, like a lounge area where people hang out, the pizza shop or whatever. And then you walk into the second room, which is like the club. So, or, the event space. So what ends up happening is when we shut down the music, everybody goes to the front space and we keep everybody inside. People are ordering food, they're hanging out inside because we're still cleaning up and whatnot. And then as soon as the ride share goes, they step out. We don't actually kick everybody out, even if there's 50 or 80 or 100 people. They're sitting in that main room, ordering pizza, ordering cookies, just hanging out. And we try to keep everybody inside until their ride share is available, because we don't pack out as soon as everybody's done. We still have like another hour and a half of closing procedures, cleaning, turning off equipment, making sure, everything is done appropriately, putting back all the stuff. So that's how we've been operating for the past few months.
All right, any other questions by anyone? Any final comments that you have to make, sir, before we close this hearing?
No, appreciate everybody's time and consideration here.
All right, thank you very much for being here today. And the board will take this matter under advisement, and we will alert you shortly what action, if any, we'll take on the license application for December 2nd, December 8th, and December 31st. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you. And we're now adjourned for the day. And I'll now ask all board members to report back to executive session for further action. Thank you very much. Have a great day.